Yes, we've got messages coming in from people who can hear us and now can see us as well. So if you can bear with us whilst we get some of these sorted. We're aware that we've got 91 people on the webinar now. And I'm waiting for the town clerk to tell us that the gremlins have been cleared and that we can actually start. So sincere apologies to you all.
I hope you all like my sunset in the background.
Very nice, David.
Yeah, I found it how to put a picture in the back.
Mm. Goodness. We're only a year and a bit into lockdown, David.
Yeah.
Is that your Tice's picture, David?
No, that's the view from my stables looking across to Farnham.
Ah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Town clerk is just trying out the slides. He's coming back to the frontal sheet now.
But Ian, George Hess is trying to get in. Maybe others.
Well, I managed to get in just by clicking the link. But whether I was supposed to click the link to get in, I don't know.
It was very easy if you did it the other point. It was very easy to get in if you did it through the numbers as well. It worked.
Well, George says he's there, but he just isn't being shown.
Well, I think he'll have to be a little bit patient because he's one of the problems that we have. And as soon as town clerk can let him in, then he will.
It's possible, Madam Mayor, George has joined him as a member of the audience using the wrong link. So
yeah, but I didn't use the wrong link. I went in exactly as I do, 10 times a day, and I was thrown into the audience.
Yeah.
Okay.
So far, we've got 14 councillors here, I think.
Kika's trying to get in. She can see you.
That's the same as George, I think.
But she's off the camera.
Town clerk, as we appear now to have 14 of us here, would you indicate whether you're ready to manage the slides and whether it's all right for us to start, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Can you see the screen now with the slides on?
I can, yes.
So we're ready to start. Councillor Hess is not showing as being on the list. Mrs. Hess is shown, but not Councillor Hess.
And we've got 2 people on the page here who are not town councillors, Ian.
That's not a problem. It's a meeting of electors. It's not a meeting of the town council.
Okay.
So we can make a start.
I think at 6:39, which is 9 minutes late, I must apologise to everybody. But this is really the biggest problem that we've ever had with a webinar. Stroke Zoom, so my apologies to you all. I think we have something like 110 people registered this evening, so a goodly number, and we're looking forward to a good evening. Just a short preamble. In 2020, there was no annual town meeting because shutdown had just then occurred. This year, in 2021, we're going virtual. So you are in on a virtual meeting and we're using Zoom / webinar, depending on the numbers. The councillors will be visible. And once they have asked a question, the electorate too will appear through their video link. During the initial presentations, and we will be having a break we're planning 7:20. Please could you keep muted so that we don't get a lot of background noise. Could you, when the time comes that you want to ask a question, please could you use the raise hand sign on your screen, because it's then easy to identify who people are and in what order. Now, this is a meeting for the residents of Farnham. It's a statutory legal meeting that local councils are required to hold once a year. So we are very pleased to see whoever happens to be here, but the only people who can actually participate are those who live in Farnham, whether they have businesses in Farnham, and whether they work in Farnham. So when it comes to you wanting to speak, I would greatly appreciate it if your name is not on your picture. Could you announce yourself and confirm that you are from Farnham and not from Farnham, Massachusetts, USA, or something like that? So if we could please have the agenda, Town Clerk. We're going to be a bit late because we're nearly a quarter of an hour late. Apart from me, we're going to have reports from working groups, and the way the Town Council is organised, it does not have committees, it has working groups, and each of those working groups is required to work for their supper. So that's why they're called working groups. Those will be, and it would have been a comfort break at 7:20. We'll see how it goes. That might be closer to 7:30, I think, for 10 minutes. And then it's an open session when we look forward to all of you participating with us. This is a residents' meeting, a Farnham community meeting. We are a community council and we look forward to the interface with you so that we can talk to each other. Could we have the next slide, please, Town Clerk? As you can see, I'm on next, but I would also like to introduce to you the leader of Farnham Town Council, who is John Neal, who you will also see on screen. He chairs the Finance and Strategy Working Group, and he will be making the last presentation because we're going to look at the other working groups of tourism, cemetery, community enhancement planning, because all of their lead members sit on strategy and finance and make recommendations to council. So that's the manner in which we're working this evening. So good evening, John. Would you just like to wave and say hello? No, he's muted. So yes, he is, right.
Just finding the mute button. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be speaking later, as Madam Mayor has just said. Thank you.
Right. We have 5 working groups and 5 lead members. So that is the agenda for how I will introduce them as they speak. So if we get on with it, the first section is the Mayor of Farnham. This is a picture of the Mayor of Farnham with her council members, which was taken at the beginning of 2019, because that's when we were elected. And I have been mayor for 2 years because COVID has intervened, and therefore, most unusually, I am doing 2 years as mayor. This is a typical year for the mayor. The mayor hosts on behalf of town council, attends events, and that is the greatest percentage, represents Farnham elsewhere, and she chairs the Farnham Town Council and other meetings. Now, the mayor is the first citizen of Farnham. and and the mayor is an ambassador for Farnham, promoting and upholding the character of the town, supporting the community and groups and projects. The mayor-making ceremony takes place in early May at the first meeting of the council, and the town mayor chairs the town council meetings and represents the town at civic and ceremonial occasions. Here is a slide which indicates some of the hosting at civic and ceremonial occasions. I'm not always wearing a robe, I can assure you, but here you see slides of the 75th anniversary of VE Day, of Forces Day, which is the centre one. The left one is a picture of the civic carol service this year, which again was virtual and held in the parish church. And bottom right, you see Remembrance Sunday. We do 2 remembrance ceremonies, and this one was on the Friday and was very specifically with the children of Farnham, and the schools were present, but socially distanced. So you can see us all wearing our poppy masks, and the theme was the poppy, and we had a very lovely poem about the significance of poppies. And then that top picture is of the presentation to people who have been awarded for their services to Farnham. And you yourselves nominate these people, and they have to meet a certain criteria, and then they attend the council chamber, and there is a presentation. So this is a picture of that. We're hoping that we can do this in a socially distanced manner this year, and it's being dated accordingly. The mayor, its role is supporting the community. And this is done in so many different ways. Some indications here. Top right was only 2 days ago when I was asked to go and open the electric cycle cafe, which is at the bottom of Downing Street. Cycle shops are a permitted activity, and therefore it was possible to do that. And so I went and cut the ribbon for them. In the centre there, it was Commonwealth Day and also International Ladies' Day last week. And the president of the Ladies Association of the Ahmadiyya Association came down, and she presented 200 face masks, which her ladies had made for us to distribute, which is what we're in the process of doing. The bottom right is another indicator: involvement with churches and around Christmas with their activities. This was St. John's, and it was a candlelit service outside, Christmas carols under the stars. And then on the left-hand side, you can see pictures of my 2 charities. The top one is Space to Grow, and that is me with my husband, David, who is my escort. And we were presented with vegetables which had been grown down there on that occasion. And then the lower one is up at Hale Community Centre, which again is my second charity. They are both working for the community, and on that occasion, they were being presented with some certificates there. A lot of supporting the community. This one originally was COVID response, and I think it really identifies the enormous support and response that Farnham Town Council has made. Right at the beginning, we developed a partnership with the Maltings, and eventually in excess of 30 organisations came together to support the community. We ourselves had the helpline based at the Town Council office that enabled people to phone up and to identify what their problem was and how we could help. Top right is what developed into Farnham Connects. And these are the people, about 35 of them, who have banded together. They now meet fortnightly by Zoom, and they are there supporting those during the COVID crisis. A fund was set up. It started off with a priming from Farnham Town Council, but then it went public, and the public gave very generously. It reached £50,000, and we have a committee assesses the needs of people, and we have expended £30,000 so far out of that. Just quickly, bottom left, reaction to COVID was the government saying that they wanted wider pavements and narrower roads and less traffic, which Farnham Town Council has been helping with trying to make it visibly more acceptable than it did at the beginning. And they've been working with Surrey County Council. It's been a painful journey, but hopefully you will agree that we have something which at the moment is visibly acceptable. And then bottom right, there was support for the vaccination programme, which continues now. We are an extremely fortunate town that we have so many people who are so willing to come forward as volunteers. And those people are you. There's 100 of you out there, and I'm quite sure that many of you will have contributed to that. Can we move on, please, Town Clerk? We don't carry out all of the services because legally we're not allowed to. So it is divided between 3 councils, and there's a list here of what Surrey County Council is responsible for. And of course, one of those things that you'll see is highways. So consequently, when there's all these problems, we can't actually do anything about them. We can act as a pressure group, and we are currently involved with them. But you'll see that there are many things there. The next level is Waverley, and these are Waverley Borough Council services. And again, you'll see car parks and fines. So that means that they own them, that they levy the car park costs and fines, and they have them, we don't. They have obviously other areas which cost them money. They have planning control, and you'll hear about this later, that we are not a planning authority, and therefore we cannot control what happens in Farnham as far as planning is concerned. We are a consultative group, and we very vociferously act in that way. And I think the last one I'll just mention there, Town Clerk, is museums at the bottom, because Waverley is the museum authority. And of course, the museum in West Street, big question mark there. And we are involved and being more involved with Waverley for its future. So if we thirdly look at Farnham Town Council services, and this is what you're going to hear about this evening, we've got our lead members who are going to tell you about what we've done in the last year on such things as allotments and Christmas lights events and tourism and cemeteries and the things that we organise and run regularly, such as farmers markets and, of course, Farnham in Bloom. These are the things that we organise at Farnham Town Council, and we will tell you about those. So I think it's a really good time to move on to those now. And I would like to ask Councillor Alan Earwaker, who is lead member of Tourism and Events, to tell us about these. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, everyone. Can I have the yes? Thank you. Last year's events were majorly affected by COVID restrictions. We had to cancel or postpone about 50% of our festivals. That included the Sustainability Festival, the Walking Festival, the Gin Festival, and the Christmas Market. These events that we did run had to be COVID safe events with social distancing. Next slide, please. The most successful events of last year were the series of Music in the Meadow. As you can see from the pictures, we managed to mark out Gostrey Meadow in COVID safe bubbles of 6, 4 or 2 people. The picture on the left is the Gostrey Meadow with the bandstand in the middle there, and you can see all the bubbles with everybody social distancing. And on the top right, you can see the layout of the bubbles and where people were located in the meadow. The music Christmas lights switch on, because we couldn't meet in Gostrey Meadow because of lockdown, we decided to take 7 beacons of light into local communities, and we were amazed by the number of people that were turning up in Gostrey Meadows just to see the 7 beacons of light all around Farnham. So we've virtually taken the Christmas light switching on into the community. This was a great success, and we plan to carry that on next year. Next slide, please. Again, farmers markets was a fantastic success as well. As you can see from the slide, we managed to put on COVID safe farmers markets to safely open under COVID restrictions. We were probably the first market in the region to open up an outdoor market, and we had many visitors from local operators who came to see how to do it. As you can see, we had safe queuing and social distancing at all times. Next slide, please. New last year was the very first West Street Market. Actually made the front page of the Farnham Herald, and this was the first time we've done a West Street Market. It went very, very successfully. It was a craft market run during October Craft Month, and we plan to run future West Street Markets this year as well. Town Centre support. You should have received a leaflet about these during Halloween and Christmas. So we were encouraging shoppers to the town centre, and we set up a Halloween trail and a Christmas trail during October and December to enable people to come into town. And especially at Christmas time, we were involved in the late night shopping 3 nights during December, and we arranged for buskers to be there in the town centre, entertaining Christmas shoppers. You should have received through your letterbox an Open for Business leaflet. This details how we're going to be safely opening for business after lockdowns. So the latest leaflet you received through your letterboxes. And online, we've produced an online shopping experience for Farnham, and this is We Are Farnham. So during lockdown, when shops were closed, we were encouraging shops to sign up to wearefarnham.co.uk so that they can put their products online. So that was another success, and that will continue even when shops are open. And finally, during 2020, we had the awarding of the World Craft status, and this was awarded to us by the World Craft Council. October is Craft Month in Farnham, and we had 54 events last year. Because of COVID, we had online events and outdoor events, and again, this was very successful. And finally, thank you for our sponsors, Kid Rapinay Solicitors and Abbeyfield Way Valley Society for sponsoring us for our events last year. You should have received this guide to Farnham that Madam Mayor showed in one of her slides. And if you look on page 32 to 34 of this, you will see all the events that are coming up this year. That completes my report. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Earwaker, who is also our Deputy Mayor and will be taking over from me on the 20th of May. Before we move on to cemetery services, are there any specific questions on the presentation that Councillor Earwaker has made? Our exchange after the break will be very much more of a general nature. He's just given a detailed account of what his working group have done this year. Does anybody wish to ask him anything specific on that? I see no raised hands at all. I'm assuming there aren't, in which case, please could we move on to the next lead member, who is Councillor Carol Cohen, who has been on the council for many years, and she is going to talk about cemetery and appeals. Councillor Cohen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I still can only see you, but I take it everybody can see the main screen.
Yes.
I don't know why you're still in vision and I'm not, but it's a bit sort of off-putting. I don't mean that rudely at all. Right, on to the cemetery services then.
Can I say, Councillor Cohen, I have pictures of down the side of the councillors, but on the shared screen, I have got the presentation, which is cemetery services. Have you got that on your screen?
No, I've got the presentation, but we saw Councillor Earwaker where you are. That's the point I was making. And I just wondered if I should be doing something else. But anyway.
You're on my screen now, so we can all see you, but you can't see yourself.
Right, fine, that's all right. It just seems slightly strange to be talking to the mayor. The town council, as this slide says, has 4 cemeteries, all very different, and I do suggest that you do visit them when you've got a spare moment. Badshotleigh, very enclosed, in some ways a busy cemetery, but if you go deep into it, it's a nice tranquil place to sit at times. And we actually put this in for Farnham in Bloom, really to see if we could raise our standard, and it did win a gold medal. So very different from some of the other cemeteries. West Street Cemetery, obviously this is our largest. And again, a walk along into the two parts is well worth doing on a nice day, much, much bigger. And of course it abuts the allotments. Green Lane is the one that's on a slope. So again, you get lovely views across the town from Green Lane. And Upper Hale, which we thought was, well, it was a closed cemetery when we took it over, but we have managed to find extra spaces so that if people want to be buried in Upper Hale, then they can be now. So we have the 4 very distinctive cemeteries, and we maintain them all to, we hope, a very high standard. This is obviously the main aim of the cemeteries, which is to provide a service to our residents. And you've got details there of what we do. Obviously, each year varies. And we are always trying to improve our offer for people who perhaps don't wish to have a full burial or even to cremate the remains, but want to have some memorial. So we are looking at different ways that we can remember people who have died in our cemeteries, even if they are not necessarily buried there. You can see the number of permits, which takes quite a time for the team to deliver. And we are obviously looking to improve our cemetery in every way we can by introducing nice memorials that people want to see, and also, of course, fixing the old ones from historical or artistic merit. There are quite a few graves as you go through that really are quite striking. What are we doing in the future? Well, we're going to try and make these the most beautiful open spaces we have in the town. You can see the number of bulbs that were planted in the Garden of Reflection. If you haven't been to see the Garden of Reflection, it is greatly improved from the first time we attempted it. And again, it's a lovely place to go and sit and reflect, which is what it's for. The wildflower areas, we've had limited success and then sort of great success, but when they work, they really work well, and it is really quite breathtaking. So I do suggest again that you walk through the cemeteries when these flowers are out and enjoy them. We obviously have quite a lot of maintenance we have to do. So we have just replaced some fencing, partly to protect the allotments, but also all the way through the year, we have to mend faulty memorials, but also look at paths, because the cemeteries are for everybody. They're for people to come and visit graves, they're for people to come and sit and reflect. And of course, they have to be safe spaces. So we have to look at maintaining them to a high standard. But we are very efficient now. The town mayor did say that it was an appeals service as well as a cemetery service, but I'm delighted to say we have fewer and fewer appeals now against our service, because now we are really a well-run service. And I would like to finish by congratulating the officers who, of course, do make sure that everything runs smoothly. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cohen. It's a very important service, and since we have taken over the ownership of the cemeteries and are running them, I think there has been a vast improvement, which is very noticeable. Before we move on, can I ask whether anybody has any specific questions to Councillor Coburn on cemeteries, please? I can't see any hands. I am assuming that means no questions. So yes, please, I would like to move on to our next working group, which is community enhancement, and the lead member is Councillor Sally Dixon. Sally, could you please come in?
Hello, good evening. Good evening, Madam Mayor. Good evening. So yes, I head up the community involvement, and first of all, I'd like to say congratulations to both of my colleagues, particularly to Alan Earmark, who did an amazing job with the events this year, and Councillor Cohen, who always does an amazing job heading up any committee she does. So, yes. So I do believe that I do have the best job in the council heading up this group. We do have a lot of fun. And I have to say in 2020, it's sort of a game of two halves in that quite a lot of events have been cancelled, but quite a lot of events went ahead. So community involvement involves working particularly with our gardening and outdoors crew to involve the community in enhancing an outdoors activities. So so for instance, there is a competition every year to decide what's going to be placed on the raised bed in Gostre Meadow, which you see on the bottom right-hand side. We also have, we would normally have the schools and community groups coming down to the greenhouses, and this has been replaced this year by some outdoor activities, which we're seeing featured top right. But we also did a number of online competitions. We had people submitting pictures of gardens and drawings of gardens using social media. And that's what you see the children in these pictures here who've won awards. And then the planting, the grounds team who work for Farnham Town Council actually have worked throughout the COVID lockdown. I think at the very beginning, we had to take some decisions on how many people could be in a vehicle. So where there would normally have been 2 people in our vehicles, all of our vehicles are green vehicles, either electric or hydrogen. But so then they had the difficulty of only being allowed to have 1 person in a vehicle, but they did actually continue on. And normally one of our big activities of the years is when we plant up all the hanging baskets that go around the town. And that would normally be a great community activity up at the greenhouses. But this year it was done just by the 5 members of the outdoor staff. They did it all, worked incredibly hard. And I think you'll all agree that this year the displays, and there were many additional displays because of the social distancing on the high street. All the planters that were put in had to be planted out as well. And you will all know that if you get a very big pot, you know, the plants just don't magically appear. Someone has to find them, has to plant them, and then has to look after them. And we do have watering trucks as well that you will have seen around the town. So the variety of outdoor spaces that we have in Farnham is very varied. So we have the greenhouses, we have the very traditional gardens like it's Victorian Gardens. I think that's right. I'm not made a mistake there, have I? It is Victorian Gardens next to Sainsbury's, which we can see bottom middle here. That I do recommend. It's such a beautiful place to go and reflect and sit right in the middle of town. And we have, we have the allotments, and then we have all the planting around the town. And here you can see bottom right are some new planters that we put into the Lion and Lamb yard this year, which is very interesting. So the allotments, now, this is something we should celebrate because COVID has been a really terrible time, but actually our allotment holders have really risen to the challenge, and this has provided a great source of community focus and activity for so many of our residents because we have so many allotments and they are so well used. So we did manage to continue on with some of the competitions. We had so you can see one of the large pumpkins that was grown, some of the displays that were put together by members, and just generally quite a good year. As you can see down the bottom there is a perennial problem of deer. The only problem we have with our allotments, and I know it's not the least bit. It's not in the least bit funny, but it does say how beautiful part of the world we live in, that we have wildlife coming in And so that's why our allotments often have fencing around them. So Farnham in Bloom went ahead as well. And as I'm almost going to say as always, but we did win prizes again. So the facts are that we won gold in the town centre 9 times, and all the other awards that you can see listed on this slide. But I think we cannot congratulate too often our outside staff, and particularly Ian McCready, who does such an amazing job in knowing what is required and achieving it. So that, despite many things, I mean, as the Lady Mayor was pointing out, so much of our town centre is outside of our control. The pavements, the black wrought iron fences, which are built, the trucks, all of those things are outside of our control and controlled by other parts of the county. But still, we do manage to make our town centre as beautiful as we can, and we win awards for it. So much to be congratulated there. And finally, some more numbers. I'm not going to read any of these out, but this is all of the things that were planted throughout our towns, thousands and thousands and thousands of plants and bulbs, and a big thank you to our sponsors, the Patio Black Spot Removal people, the Farnham Institute, Pivot, the Forest Lodge, Mercure Hotels, Squires Garden Centre, the Wildflower Turf, Net Technical Solutions, and of course, Continental Landscape. Thank you so much to all our sponsors. Without you, we wouldn't be there. Thank you so much. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Sally Dixon, who you can see is a great enthusiast. Are there any specific questions to her before we move on? I'm looking at my screen and I cannot see any specifics. Perhaps they'll come out of the general session. So moving on to something which I know is so very important to Farnham, to the council and to you, and that is our planning and licensing working party, who meet fortnightly on a Monday. So could I ask its lead member, Councillor Brian Edmonds, to make his report, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, indeed. Loud and clear.
Thank you very much. The first slide, it identifies some of the documents that are used in planning. And planning has a multitude of documents, which makes planning at times very complex and unpredictable. The first document I point to yourselves is the Waverley Borough Council Local Plan Part 1. Essentially, that's a legal document. It has primacy and essentially defines how Waverley is developed. All development applications should comply with that policy. The second document, which again is very important for Farnham, and that's the Farnham Neighbourhood Plan. That defines how Farnham should be developed, and it also has legal authority. Those are the two critical documents in which all planning decisions should. Sorry, have I been lost?
No, you're still with us. But I think
sorry, I got a screen which said something different. So essentially, it looks as if the system's unstable. I'll carry on, Madam Mayor.
You're still with us, Councillor Edmonds.
Okay, sorry. Thank you very much.
There was another voice that came in, and can I ask that anybody who is not muted will mute, please, so that there's no background sounds at all, please. Carry on, Councillor Edmonds.
Thank you. The other significant document is all are significant, but essentially we're talking priority, is the residential extensions, which I think was approved by the full Waverley Council in 2013. And essentially that guides how all residential extensions should be developed. Unfortunately, it is not always applied to the developments. So I'd like now to move on to the second slide, if possible. Unfortunately, in planning, we don't have much fun. As you can probably see from the number of applications that we review, over the past 12 months, it's 869. The household applications at 467 is significant. But the one thing that possibly many people don't understand is the role of the planning inspector. Now, the planning inspector is someone that a developer can appeal to if they don't like basically what Waverley Borough Council has decided. And the planning inspector then decides whether Waverley Borough Council has made a right decision or not. The unfortunate thing about the planning inspector is he only addresses applications that are refused. If you don't like the application being approved by Waverley Borough Council, unfortunately, the planning inspector is of no use to you. That is not a situation that he can address or chooses to address. Essentially, there's a list of all the applications, all the activities that we carry. And obviously, if there's any questions, I would like to take them. I think it's probably better if questions are asked rather than me go through information that people might not want. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Your working group worked extremely hard, and we thank you all for what you do. Now, can I just remind participants that if you wish to raise a question or whatever, that at the bottom of your screen, there is a sign which says raise hand. Now, if you press that, then it should come onto my participants list, which should then indicate that you wish to ask a question. So can we see whether or not that has worked or is working? Is there anyone who wants to ask Councillor Edmonds a specific question on his report?
Madam Mayor, there are two hands raised.
Right.
Has their hands raised.
Now, you're going to have to help. You are going to have to help me here because I can't see those. So can you tell me who those are?
David Howell to begin with.
Okay. David Howell, could you please ask whatever, please? Are you unmuted, David?
It looks like it's David Wild rather than David Howell. Is that correct?
Right, so two Davids, David Howell and David Wild, but I'm not seeing either of them, whereas you are. And I've got some additional ones on the bottom of my screen now, which is really good, but not either of those, and not with hands up. So I'm going to invite David Howell to speak again, please.
I think in fact it's David Wild. David, is it you that wanted to ask a question?
Yes, I pressed my button too early. I have a general question, so I'm sorry. Can I come later?
Yes, in the general section, you most certainly can, David. Thank you. And can you advise on David Howell then, Town Clerk?
No, I think what happened was that David Wild had used David Howell's joining instructions, and so he's come up with his name. But we resolved that now, and there's no further questions currently raised.
No, and I've now got that list of participants, which is absolutely wonderful. But I have got a hand. Olive Graham.
Is, and it's just an example, is that a building built in Lower Bourne opposite the Fox pub, which apparently isn't anything like the development was intended to be, and looks like 4 container units put on top of one another. It doesn't have the green roof it was meant to have. It's sitting further forward than it was meant to be. How can we let things like that come in as a blot on Farnham?
Can I answer, Madam Mayor?
Yes, please do.
Essentially, excuse me, any planning decision should have planning conditions, and the planning conditions should be met, otherwise it's a breach. The loopholes, how could I put it? Maybe not loopholes. The problem is that enforcement is discretionary. So the first thing is, if someone builds a development that is not as per the plan, then the complaint should be sent to Waverley Borough Council to say that there's been a breach of planning conditions. Waverley Borough Council then should investigate to see if the breach has actually taken place. Then they will decide a course of action. They could either enforce the planning conditions or choose not to, and they have the discretion. In other words, unfortunately, enforcement of planning conditions at the moment is discretionary.
So we've actually got something without any teeth as our legislation. Is that what you're saying?
I would tend to agree with you, and that is, I'm an old councillor, but an old man, but a new hand. And I do not understand, in the 18 months that I've been involved with the council, why enforcement is not more rigorous than it is. I think I gotta put it, enforcement should take place, but unfortunately, there's too much discretion. So what you can do is, if you're unhappy with the response that you get from Waverley Borough Council, then you go into the complaints procedure.
I must say, I've no interest in particular in that building. It's just that it looks so awful. And local people have said it's nothing like the planning that was put in.
Madam Mayor, is it possible for me to come in?
Yes, of course it is, Councillor Cohen. Please do.
Can you all hear me? I'm sorry, I'm so confused with this system. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
And we can see you.
That's fine. This is ongoing. This is not a failed enforcement scheme at the moment. It's when enforcement was taken, and enforcement has been taken, if the applicant comes in suggesting a planning application to put right the wrong, then we have to let that go through the process. We can't just say, no, you can't come in. But you're absolutely right, Mrs. Graham, that has been built in the wrong place, to the wrong specification, using the wrong materials, and everyone hates it. I mean, you've only got to look at the number of objections and letters that we receive on it. But it is not true to say that enforcement hasn't worked. It hasn't worked yet because of the process, but that's not to say that the officers are not seeking resolution on this side. So please, I know I'm asking you to be patient, and you've had to look at the house for a long, long time and get very, very angry, but it is not over. Enforcement hasn't failed. I'm afraid it has to take its course, and that is what it's doing. And there should be some action on that side relatively quickly now. We've waited a long time. So if we could just be a little bit more patient, we'll wait until this current application has been through the system. I'm afraid if it is refused, and I don't know what it's going to be, whether it's to be refused, but if it is refused, then I'm afraid the applicant still has the right to go to appeal. So it could be still a little bit further in the future, but that doesn't mean that
I don't live in the board
anybody
anymore, but I see it as I go past and wonder why on earth it's there.
Yeah, but all I wanted to say, Mrs. Graham, was that basically, it has not been accepted. That's all I'm saying. The process is still ongoing.
Thank you.
To try and get something on that site which is suitable. Thank you.
And perhaps we can also emphasise that we are not the authority for enforcement. So yet again, as the planning authority, these things have to be referred on to Waverley Borough Council to undertake that work.
Sorry,
right.
Madam Mayor. I think
Yes.
Councillor Merriweather's got his hand up, and then I would like to add a comment.
Right. Now, I don't want us to have a full debate here.
Okay.
Because otherwise we're never going to get to the last section and then to the full debating session.
Sure.
Councillor Merriweather, is it relevant, please? I'm sure it is.
Well, I hope so, Madam Mayor. Good evening, everybody. I mean, although Waverley is described as the planning authority, I think it might be helpful for our electors if Councillor Edmonds could just describe how that works. He talked about planning appeals, but I'm no fan of planning, and I drive past the house in question pretty much every day with my jaw pretty much as close to the floor as it can get. So it might be helpful for the electors to understand that even though Waverley's the planning authority, it doesn't actually get to set the rules that it has to enforce.
Fine. Can we do that? And then can we move on any other planning issues into the general debating? Please, Councillor Edmonds. Yes, please.
In answer to the question, Waverley does not set the rules, but it applies the rules. And I would further add, I think, as Councillor Coburn has indicated, the process of appeals. Enforcement is a long, cumbersome process with a large amount of discretion. I think we ended there, Madam Mayor, otherwise we'll get into a debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's easy to see how we could get completely involved in each planning application detail. Now, finally, in this section, I'm going to ask the lead member and leader of the council, Councillor John Neal, to give a presentation on strategy and finance working group. Over to you, Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and hello, everybody again. I'll get through this as quickly as I can, but I'm sure there's some things here that you'd be interested in learning about. So let's go on to this. This is talking about the Town Council's budget for next year, 21 to 22. And it's interesting to see the comparison with this current year that we're in at the moment to see what's happened. You can see that the gross budget that we set is much the same for the 2 years. So there's not a lot of change on that line. The projected income, however, you can see a big difference there. And this is the impact of the COVID situation. What you're seeing on the left column there is the projected income, what we expected to get when we set it a year ago. But of course, over the year, we haven't been able to hold many of the events. So the income we actually achieved this year will be much less than that. And because of that, we are anticipating a lower budget next year as well. So you can see the difference, the real impact that COVID is having on us now. It's taking over, £50,000 out of the revenue that we can generate ourselves towards our budget. The next line is about grants and reserves. The grant line is that we receive a grant at the moment from central government because they introduced a change a few years ago that affected our income. So there's been a grant over the last few years, which is tapering off and will probably disappear in the near future. So that has been the 14,000 figure primarily. But next year, it'll be much less. And because we don't want to increase the taxation level, we will be using our reserves quite significantly next year. That's why the 34,000 figure comes in. Now, the precept is the money that we actually raise through taxation. And you can see there that we've actually managed to reduce that in the coming year from what we're running at the moment. And we've done that deliberately to reduce taxation next year. It puts us under a lot of pressure because we're still doing a lot of things, of course, but we felt that was right for our residents in this difficult financial year. The next line is, in effect, the number of properties that are taxed for the local tax. And when you divide the precept line by the number of taxable properties, you get the annual council tax per person per annum, per household per annum. So this current year it's running at £66 or so. Next year it's going up a little bit to £67. It's less than 2%, less than most comparable councils, I would say, and certainly less than the figures in Waverley and Surrey. But of course they have rather different challenges to what we have, so that's not a directly comparable thing. Just to give you a view of the overall situation, this is the taxation level. It's called Band D, which is the average sort of thing for next year. You can see that most of the money in effect goes to Surrey County Council. They have the big spending items on things like infrastructure and social services and what have you. So they have to have the biggest slice of the cake there. The next biggest is Waverley, who obviously provide a lot of the services on refuse collection and things like that. The next biggest one is the police, actually. The third biggest one is Waverley. And the smallest one, little green one at the top, is us, okay? Just give you a broad idea of what goes on, okay? Now, if you look at our budget ourselves at the Town Council, this broadly tells you where it all gets portioned out to the various things that we offer that have been covered earlier this evening. I'm not going to go into that in detail. It's just to give you a broad idea. But there's one thing I will just point to out of interest here. Up on the top left of the picture, it mentions town centre including infrastructure project. Now I'm going to talk about that next. And you'll notice that's a very small part of this picture. Now what that is telling us is that most of the services that we deliver, which fill up the rest of the picture, take most of the money. But we do a lot of other things, which I'm going to come on to, which are not really part of our budget and not really part of our remit. The things you see on the slide there are our statutory duties, but we do a lot of other things, which I'm going to come on to now. And, they're not big funders at the moment. So let's move on to what we're really looking at in the future here and the changes that we're coming to. So plans for 2021 to 2022 is the next slide. And I'll just run through these quickly for you now. Now, one of the things that we do a lot of is that we've built a strong relationship, maybe stronger relationship with Surrey and Waverley councillors over the last couple of years. I think people will have noticed that we're working in cooperation with them much more than I think we've sometimes managed in the past. Waverley's been closest to us, and that's been quite a fruitful relationship. Surrey's been always a little bit more distant, but they're important players, obviously, especially on the infrastructure side, where we're working very much at the moment. And we've got a very good relationship with both of those other councils on the infrastructure project that we're running at the moment, which is well covered in the news. I'm sure most of you here will know about it. So moving on to that, looking after Farnham's interest. Well, that's a sort of catch-all title as well. We're very proactive on everything that goes on in the town. Most of the things you've already seen are covered by the two principal councils, the two in the top line there. But we like to take an interest in everything that's going on and make sure that we're looking after your interests and, if necessary, taking them forward to the other two councils. As an example of that, public buildings. Most of the public buildings in the town don't belong to the town council at all. They belong either to Surrey County Council or to Waverley Council. So we don't have direct responsibility over them, but because of various economic and changes and even the COVID situation at the moment, a lot of these buildings are going to have to be looked at in terms of future usage over the next few years. We've got two important buildings which the community use, in particular, the library and the museum in both in West Street. And we've got to look at that with our partner councils there to work out the way forward. You'll be hearing much more about these, I think, over the next year. Parks and green spaces, again, we don't really have ownership in the town of those public realm places. Farnham Park, for example, is owned by Waverley Borough Council. So a lot of those are owned by Waverley and some by Surrey, and we take a strong interest in those as well. Make sure that they're matching what we want them for the town people here, and working with the councillors to make them work. And of course, we also take a lot of interest in what happens around us. that is in none of those principal councils. Hampshire, of course, is right on our border. Aldershot, Rushmore, Fleet, Hart, things that happen there have a great impact on what happens in the town, especially on the planning side, because there's a lot of house building going on in those areas that attracts people to our town, but at the same time, it causes lots more pressure on our infrastructure. So we need to work closely with those outside councils as well. So moving on to this slide here, another thing I wanted to mention on the other councils is of course that we're taking a lot of interest at the moment in the incinerator plan that's happening in Alton. Very close to us, but not under our control, but we talk with them a lot on that one as well. Now, the infrastructure program you'll have heard a lot about, and as I said, is a 3-council program, very heavily into that at the moment. There's been lots of local consultation on that over the last 6 months, which I'm sure a lot of you here will have gone to. The latest stage is, as you will probably know, is that the program team behind this have produced a very strong analysis of everything that's been going on and all the needs, and they have put together some options for us in this document called the Optimised Infrastructure Plan, which has been under consultation again with the public recently, and that consultation is ending now. We have just, as a town council last night, in fact, through a council meeting, put together our response to the program, because although we're participants in it, we don't actually control it. It's a joint thing between the other two as well. So we have just made a response to that. Very broadly speaking, I'm only going to hit on a couple of key points here. We want to make a move towards improving the town centre, and that involves some aspect of pedestrianisation. So we've made a move more in that direction, and we hope that will, revitalise the town centre, and help the retail industry and help bring more community aspects to the town centre. So that's been a very difficult challenge over many years because of the problems that we have with the traffic movements around the town and through the town as well. But we're very insistent in our response here that if we're going to achieve that objective, which is our objective, then we must make sure that we look after all the areas around that are affected in any way by the traffic changes that we're going to do. We're helped to a certain extent here because there's a big initiative now at government level on climate change, health and fitness, and active travel, as it's called, which is getting people to use cycles more if we can. Perhaps improving the bus services, which is a government initiative, which you'll have seen in the press recently. So all those things should help us make the changes that we want. And of course, at the end of the day, we will be looking to you in the community to help us achieve that and to be part of the adaptation that is going to go on. So we look forward to talking to you more about that and listening to your comments as we go forward. Of course, we will continue to maintain all the events that we've been doing, that we've been talking about so far, make sure that we keep the standards up, and I hope you think that that's improved over the years, and we will strive to make that even higher over the next few years. Two particular things more I want to mention. We're doing a lot of support for the business community at the moment, especially in the COVID response area. We've done a lot with the hospital and with the medical people to do testing and the vaccination program. We've helped a lot to put that together with our medical partners. And we're doing a lot with the business community to do everything that we can to help support the businesses at the moment. And we will continue to do that to help them in the future, over the next year in particular, as hopefully the lockdowns come out. There's an initiative called Business Improvement Districts, which is really run by the town centre businesses themselves. We will help them to put that in place. It's not something which we directly control, but we will help. And of course, we're doing a lot of things to underpin the World Craft Town initiatives. One more last thing there, the Brightwells scheme will be coming live hopefully later on in this year. We want to see it filled out. We're doing as much as we can to make that area a success. And depending on how the shop take-up goes in that area, we might even be bringing in some other community features into the area as well. So we're working very closely with Surrey and Waverley, who have both got involvement in the Brightwells project. It wasn't something which it was our project in the initial phases, but of course it's now part of the town and it's got to be a success, and we're going to help to make it do that. Okay, I think that's pretty much what I needed to say. It's a very quick handover. I've gone very quickly through it. I would just like to put my thanks to all the councillors and officers who's helped us this year, because we have really ramped up the workload. And, you know, I need to thank all my colleagues on that front. And we've also had a lot of help from the community, and I'd like to thank the community as well in the work that we've been doing as well. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to conclude there.
Thank you. Now, we are running half an hour late, and therefore I would like to hold any questions to the open question session. I would like to suggest that we have our 10-minute break and that we resume again promptly at 8 o'clock. And can I assure everyone that you are allocated an hour for questions, and we will extend the meeting and retain an hour for questions if required. So thank you very much indeed for your listening ability to what we felt we needed to tell you, and we'll come back again for open question session, 10 minutes time at 8 o'clock sharp. Thank you.
Oh.
Can I start calling everybody back in, please, councillors? My clock tells me it is 9 o'clock. No, in fact, 8 o'clock. So wishing time away. So perhaps we could all now resume. Already I've got 2 hands up from those who joined us this evening. So I hope you've all recovered from the initial session, and I'm going to start asking people to come in. We'll see how it goes, but it might be easier if we deal with general questions to begin with, and then go on to infrastructure questions. But let's see how it goes. So, in fact, John Watson has just disappeared off, and he's been very patiently, his hand has been up for a long time. So, John, can I invite you back in, please? I can see, I'm not sure whether you're unmuted or not. Would you like to speak to us, John?
Hello, it's actually Sue Watson. My husband is also here. I wanted to point out, I think it's on...
I'm finding, sorry, volume is rather low. Could you get closer to your microphone, do you think, please?
Just a moment. Oh, dear. Can you hear me better now?
That's better, yes.
Okay. Right. I think it was on slide 41 of your presentation. The councillor was pointing out that the precept has reduced between this year and next year. And in fact, the figures show the reverse.
Right. I'm going to pass this on to John Neal. It's a question of precept and why it has gone up and not gone down, John.
No, I think she said it's gone. I think she said I said it had gone down instead of going up. If I did say it had gone down, I was in error. It has gone up by £1.30, and I apologise if that's the case. I must have been rushing too much.
Okay, I was looking at the figures. 1.146 million as opposed to 1.69 million, and you were explaining why it had gone down.
Oh, I see. Oh, that figure. I thought you were looking at the tax figure.
No.
That's because we deliberately set a lower budget for the coming year. As I said, we wanted to try and reduce the impact on taxpayers. Simple as that.
Yes, but it's gone up.
Oh, sorry, that one's, yeah, that figure's up.
Town clerk, I think, can probably answer that one, Leader.
Yes, if he likes.
Yes, the quirk that we have here is that there are exemptions for people who pay their council tax, and there's also, if you look at the very bottom of that slide, it talks about the collection rate. Once you have your total number of Band D properties, there is a multiplier that's applied. Until this year, it was at 99%. But because of the difficulties that the community is facing in general, the multiplier has been reduced to 98%, i.e. Waverley Borough Council feels that it's not likely to collect the 99% that it's been collected in previous years. That then has a knock-on effect on the number of Band D properties that we have. Our income, the budget is reduced in terms of expenditure, but so has the projected income. So if you see there is a figure of about £50,000 difference from what we were forecasting in this current financial year to what we are forecasting for the next financial year. So when you take those two things together, even though we have used around £25,000 of our reserves to reduce the impact, it still does lead to a small increase in the amount that we're collecting from our council taxpayers. We've done what we can to try and minimise it, but there is a net result that it is going up a small amount.
Okay, thank you.
I think that answers that question very fully. Thank you to both of you for that, and thank you for the question. Next on the list is Graham Brownlee. Can you unmute so that we can hear you, please? But now I've got Olive Graham, so no, that's the next one, I think. Right, Graham, over to you, but please unmute. That is in the bottom, on the bottom layer, on the left-hand side, there is a sign for mute. And
I have already asked my question, which was about housing planning and keeping to this sort of idea.
No,
I
appreciate that. I was trying to get in contact with Graham Brownlee.
Okay.
But I don't seem to make any contact with him. Perhaps he can come back if he's still got a question. Next one on the list is David Gill. Evening, David. Have you unmuted? Yes, unmuted, David.
Can you hear me, Madam Mayor?
Yes, I can, thank you. You're still now showing as muted. Did you press that button again?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Isn't technology wonderful?
Yes, when it works, you're right.
Madam Mayor, I'd just like to take this opportunity, if I may, to pay tribute to Farnham Town Council. So it's a comment rather than a question. To you, Madam Mayor, for your years of service during this difficult period, to the conscientious councillors, to your hard-working town clerk and staff, because I've observed from a distance that you haven't conceded to the pandemic. With all the community and help services you provided, you've gone, in my view, above and beyond the call of duty. And during perhaps one of the most challenging years in the history of Farnham Town Council, you showed a huge amount of TLC. And that's my comments, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much.
David, we can't thank you enough. It has been an exceedingly difficult year, and we have all pulled together as a team, the councillors and the staff, And what has been achieved has been quite incredible, because we've carried on our council work by using Zoom, carried on making decisions to enable things to happen in the town. And we have done it with enormous pride on behalf of Farnham and the electorate, because it is a wonderful place to be, and we are pleased that we've been able to keep things relatively normal at a time when it's very abnormal. So on behalf of everybody, thank you, and I really appreciate the comments that you've made, David. Thank you. Can I also say that we're very appreciative of the work you've been doing with the Sports Council, because we know too that that has continued this year. So from us to you, thank you to the Sports Council and for keeping so many people's sanity through sport. Thank you. Right, can we move on? Sophia Lovell. If you can unmute and if you can ask us whatever you would like to, Sophia. No, rather like Graham Brownlee, she seems to have disappeared from the system. I can only hope that if we're losing them, that we can regain them. But
I'm here. Can you hear me now, Madam Mayor?
I can indeed. Thank you, and I can see you too. Good.
Oh, I can see you as well. Good evening.
Yes. Good evening.
I just got one simple question. Way back in the summer, the Farnham Herald had an article regarding the Surrey Unitary Authority proposal. I would be interested in view, and I've spoken to Councillor MacLeod on this matter quite a few times. I would like to know what the council's view, Farnham Town Council's view, is on that proposal, given that towns and parishes are supposed to be given more responsibility under that authority. Thank you.
I think I know, Sophia, who would like to answer that, who will be John Neal, our leader, but I just wonder if there's anybody else who wants to make an observation prior to him stepping in on that one. Anybody want to put forward any views on that?
I would love to, Madam Mayor.
I'd love you to, Councillor Ward.
I am speaking purely as a Farnham Town Councillor, although of course you know I have another day job. Surrey are determined to have a mega unitary for the whole of Surrey, and I am quite convinced the government would like that too. That is going to come back and haunt us in the next couple of years. What the Town Council's view is depends how much of the hype that you believe. There are a number of people in Surrey who are trying to persuade you that yes, the Town Council will get much more authority. People are trying to tempt you with the idea that the Town Council is going to take over planning. But what actually Surrey are going to do or intend to do is to have 23 regional networks, which will be unelected, appointed by this great mega council, and they will take over all the work. And the town and parish councils, I'm afraid, will be reduced to mowing the lawn outside the office and going for coffee. Do not believe the snake oil salesman who tells you the fact the town council will get more responsibility. It won't.
Thank you very much. And I think that we should say up front that for those of you who might not know, Councillor Ward is the leader of Waverley Borough Council, as well as being a member of long-standing of Farnham Town Council. Right, I've got Councillor Cohen.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think there is going to be some form of reorganisation. I don't think we can stop that. I believe passionately in towns and parishes. I think it's where the knowledge lies, the experience lies, all the work we have ever done. The best work has been done by residents' associations, community groups, and basically the town and parish councils. And I really do think that whatever happens, and I said this, as you know, at a meeting, we as a town council just have to speak up so strongly for what we believe in. That's all we can do. I'm with Councillor Ward. I don't think anyone is going to hand us anything on a plate. And I think we have to prove our worth. I've always said you have to do the job, prove your worth long before people respect you for doing it. And I think, you know, this is something we have got to do. If you believe in localism, and I'm a passionate believer in localism, as anybody who's had to listen to me over the last 20 years will know, I just believe in the expertise of the local person. They know, they understand, they live it, their children are there, their grandchildren, their aunts, uncles, also. You have such a wealth of information and knowledge. And for that to be sidelined for some huge great authority elsewhere, yes, it will be more efficient in certain ways, but when it comes to understanding what needs to be done in your town, in your village, then there is nobody wiser than the sum total of all the residents. And as far as I am concerned, whatever is thrust upon us or attempted to be thrust upon us, you know, we as a town council working with and on behalf of others that are perhaps slightly smaller than us, we should be fighting our corner every day of the week, starting from now. And I'm quite happy to lead the charge. I'll wave the flag anywhere because I feel so strongly that localism is the way forward. And as I say, whatever happens, we have to keep that as the essential part of local government. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Neil, I'm sure that you would like to have an input on this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we believe that we have shown the community here that the town council is very strong and looks after everything that we do in a pretty effective way. We fight above our weight, really. As I said in my earlier presentation, we cover a lot of ground, which is not necessarily directly on our plate, but we work with the other councils, we work with surrounding councils, and we work with everybody to, you know, to make sure we do this. So we are already putting together the plans of what we want to happen, how we think we should be operating in the future. We've already had councillor meetings on that topic, and we will be progressing those and making our case as soon as we can. And when we do get to that, of course, we will be reaching out to the community here to get your support and to ask you to show that support as well. As part of that activity, we have also spoken to some other councils that have gone through this in parts of the country where unitary authorities have been introduced. We're speaking to them to find out their experiences, and their experiences are not all that encouraging. They are along the lines that Councillor Ward has just mentioned, which is not the way we want to go. So, you know, we will be making the case as best we can that there should be a democratically elected council looking after local aspects here, as we do at the moment. And really, we would prefer to be doing more than we do in a way. But we want to make sure that we continue that part of the game and work with whoever ends up being the higher level council looking after the more strategic aspects. There should be a much better way of working between us and the strategic council than we've been able to achieve over the years, because having 3 levels of council doesn't always help. So we want to see our position, you know, solidified, improved really, and not just shunted out of the way by some minor consortee within a unitary authority. So that is what we're doing, and please help us when we take up the fight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I see that Councillor Ramsdale, who is a Surrey County Councillor, has got his hand up, but as not an elected member of Farnham Town Council, then I think that we should put the local electorate with their questions, and I'm sure that he will understand that point. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Can we go to Louise Daybourne, please?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, lovely, thank you. Madam Mayor, as a Farnham resident and a member of Sir Optimist International Surrey Hills, I refer to recent national events and the huge publicity given to whether women feel safe on our streets. Do Farnham Town Council believe our streets are safe for women? And if so, why? If not, what are your plans to ensure they become so? Thank you.
I think I would, and can I say yes, I know of the Sir Optimist. I am a very long-standing lady Rotarian since the early 90s. So I'm aware of your organisation personally. What I would say on this one is that this is clearly such a dreadful thing which has happened within the last week. And I would feel sure that all of the members of Farnham Town Council would support the fact that the streets should be safe for everybody. And that, of course, includes us as females. But no, they haven't got a decisive view on it because it is so very recent. But this is something I will put back into the system, and we will come back to you with a written answer of anything that it's decided that they wish to pursue on it. But at this moment in time, it is not a subject which has been debated, talked about, shared as a council, because it has only happened in the past week. Do you wish to come back on that?
Madam Mayor, may I add a comment here?
Yes, please do, Councillor Neil.
Yes, thank you. Yes, as the Mayor has just said, this has reached a high profile recently in the news, as we all know. It's not something which has been one of the lists in our infrastructure programme, but I'm sure that my colleagues in that programme on all three councils will want to take this into the programme when we're planning changes, especially in walkways and cycleways and anything like that. I'm sure we'll want to take that on board and make sure that we're covering those aspects as well. So please be assured we will look after that subject. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you wish to come back on that, please? No.
Madam Mayor,
So,
may I just mention one more thing, which I should have said earlier when I talked about the infrastructure programme and the council meeting we had. What came out last night in our council meeting was, of course, the Farnham Council's view on what we would like to happen. But our view is then fed into the three council programme. So we are just one member of that. So our recommendations or views as consultees will go to the Farnham board, and the way forward, of course, will be decided by the three council tripartite. Thank you.
thank you. Now, I thought I had another speaker, but there is no hand there.
It was Damien Blower, Madam Mayor.
It was indeed. Thank you very much, Town Clerk.
Hello, sorry, my hand had gone. Forgive me, this question might have been asked before, but with the pandemic, one forgets that Brexit's also happened. How is the Town Council engaging with the new reality, either in its current relationships, developed over decades with the European towns and communities, and how is it thinking about engaging with the new reality of a more open global outlook, and particularly in respect of visitors and students and professionals coming to the area from some of these exciting new growing economies.
Right, thank you very much for that. Now, is there anybody who feels they wish to speak up on that? Otherwise, I think I might go to Councillor Earwaker to see whether he has any views because of his events and tourism working group. Anybody else?
Town Clerk's got his hands up.
Thank you, Councillor Earwaker. Very quick of you.
I'm always happy to talk, Madam Mayor, but I'll concede to the other members. I don't want to hog it also.
No, that's what I'm trying to do, Councillor Neil. So, Town Clerk.
Yes, thanks, Damien. I mean, it's the sort of direct impacts on us are relatively small, although we're already finding it difficult to get certain products that we need as a result of the current situation, but that will sort itself out. I think the most important thing for us to be looking at as a community is how we can continue to sustain the university. The Erasmus programme that had made quite a significant impact in terms of supporting students from Europe that were coming to the UK is now being replaced by the Turin programme. And I'm sure that the university will be applying for funds for that when they go live in a couple of weeks' time. And that will enable two-way exchanges to continue. It's very important for our own students to have that international experience because it broadens minds and it broadens experience. And so we'll certainly be continuing with our relationships with our twin town and the partners that are there. And this year is the 30th anniversary of the friendship with Andernach in the Main-Koblenz region of Germany. So at the moment, things are very uncertain because of COVID, but we're part of an international community and we will continue to play our part within that. And I know that councillors have been very supportive both of the university and of our friendships with other parts of the world. So I wouldn't see that changing.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, I've got...
I would just add
yes.
that we haven't really done a great deal about our World Craft Town status, and I would imagine that this coming year you'll see more activity to do with World Craft Town, and that will include both Europe and all parts of the world, because we will have contact with other world craft cities in Europe and around the world.
Thank you. Now, I have Peter Cohen on my list, and following that, I know that David Wild also wants to speak. So can I invite Peter Cohen to come in? Are you there, Peter Cohen? Well, perhaps we can find him, and in the meantime, can we go to David Wild? I can see you, David. Should we continue with David Wild and come back?
Shall I start? Shall I start?
I think we've got some gremlins, haven't we?
I think both were speaking at once.
David should be able to go ahead.
Shall I start?
Yes.
Please.
I know this is not directly a town council issue, but would someone in the council, on behalf of the wondering public, put some pressure on Surrey and/or an ever tight-lipped Crest Nicholson to play their part spilling some beans about what is in prospect for Brightwell as the summer unfolds. End of question.
Town Councillor, I couldn't hear that very well. Could you repeat it? Right. We have a question from David Wild. If we can pursue that one, and then I think come back. Right, we'll try again. Town Clerk, could you... Mr. Cohen,
Madam Mayor,
yeah,
David's going to this about Brightwells. Can Andy talk on that?
No, I know who I'm going to ask to deal with. It's fine, but I'm trying to deal with the gremlins. Thank you.
I've got a feeling that David. I think David may have two devices open, and he's got feedback in his office. Is that correct, David?
Say again, please.
I think you may have two devices on, and it's. But I think as what is happening with the Brightwell scheme, and can we have some answers? So I think Councillor MacLeod
yes, indeed,
has heard that and will respond.
Yes, Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very happy to do that. As the leader, John Neal, said in his introduction, although the Town Council isn't responsible for Brightwells, it's a very important project for the Town Council. In fact, it's probably the biggest building project in Farnham since the building of the castle in the 12th century. I just looked up on my other computer, and that was built in 1138 by the Bishop of Winchester, who's the grandson of William the Conqueror. So it's quite a momentous scheme for Farnham. It's an over £100 million scheme. I think it's worth saying, for people's benefit, a few words about what Brightwells is, because not everybody will fully understand what Brightwells is, although we all hear about Brightwells. It's a big scheme. Roughly half of it is residential. There's going to be 239 flats in separate blocks, and many of them on top of the shops. There's going to be 25 retail units, 8 restaurants, a cinema, and a large car park, which partly replaces the dog flood car park, but also provide parking for the residents. Now, in terms of an update on what's happening with Brightwells, it started as a partnership between Waverley Borough Council and Crest Nicholson, and it later became a three-way partnership, including Surrey County Council, because Crest are continuing to invest in the residential side, but they were looking for a partner to invest in the commercial side, which are the shops, the restaurants, cinema, etc. And Surrey came on board to do that. Now we have regular board meetings with Crest, and they're so important that the leader, John Ward, attends, and sometimes Paul Follows, the deputy leader, attends. And we ask them every meeting for an update on how the scheme's going. The scheme was originally due to open in about April of this year, but because of the COVID problems, the building programme had to go back quite reasonably, and it initially went back to July, but the current plan is for it to open in September, and the cinema will open a month or so later in December. So that's a picture of when the scheme will open. In terms of how well it's going, which I think was part of David's question, in terms of if you like, the residential side, that as I say, that's Crest's responsibility. But the early indications are there's quite a lot of interest in the flats. Actually, they've now launched a sales campaign, and the informal feedback I've had is that they've sold a few of the flats. But in the next meeting, which will take place in about 2 weeks' time, we'll be asking for an update from Crest and precisely how that's going. But it's encouraging that the flats are selling. That's a good thing for the town. In terms of the actual commercial side of the thing, the position with that is Crest are still telling us that the only absolutely signed up tenants that they are is that Marks and Spencer's for the biggest retail unit. There's going to be a big Marks and Spencer's retail unit just beside. It's mainly going to be a food unit just beside Sainsbury's. The other people that are signed up, there's a small clothing company called Sea Salt are signed up. And then we have the cinema, which is going to be real cinema. And Councillor Ward and myself, we had a meeting recently with Real, and it's encouraging that they say they're still fully committed to the scheme. You know, and all the difficulties cinemas are having right now, that's very encouraging. And they're looking to put in a high-class cinema in Farnham, not just an everyday, you know, 8-screen cinema. They're going to put in luxury seats with food to the table and that type of thing. So that's all encouraging. But in terms of the actual letting out of the retail units, obviously there's a big problem right now in that, you know, retail has gone much more online. COVID hasn't helped, etc. But despite that, Crest are still saying they're very confident that they'll be able to get enough, sufficient retailers in by September. They've even mentioned they're talking to sufficient retailers that they would hope to fill 70% of the scheme at that stage. Now we have to wait and see if that actually happens. They're the experts in that. They've got experts helping them. Surrey are closely involved with that. So that's what we hope will happen. We can't be certain that will happen actually, but we have to wait and see. But you know, Waverley Council is totally committed to the success of this scheme, and if it doesn't work out in the present plan configuration, we will be talking to Surrey about how things can be evolved, because this scheme just has to succeed. It's been built. We weren't responsible for it initially, but when you win an election, there's a multi-party administration at Waverley with John Ward as the leader. We have a deputy leader from the Lib Dems, etc. And we're all committed to the success of the Brightwell scheme. So I hope that helps, David. It's the best answer I can give at the moment. And we'll have more answers after our next meeting with Chris Nicholson, which will be in approximately 2 weeks' time. So thank you, Madam Mayor. That's the best answer I can give at the moment.
Thank you.
And that was a very full answer, and I'm very appreciative of that. But I believe that Councillor Cohen wants to add something.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I do, because I don't believe one more meeting with Chris Nicholson is going to answer any more questions than we have at the moment. The truth is, we don't know what's going to happen. We've got COVID. We don't know what's going to happen in the town post-COVID. We have no idea which businesses are going to go under, which businesses are going to move. And when we had to put in some extra housing for the neighbourhood plan, the first thing I did was go and speak to Chris Nicholson and say, and this was pre-COVID, and I said, look, you know, retail is changing. Is this not a good time to look at the balance between residential and retail? And they refused to do that. But I don't think there's any doubt that some of the retail in Brightwells will end up being residential. But more than that, it will suck out some of the retail from the other parts of the town. And I can remember talking to Madam Mayor years ago about this, when the first thing was proposed, that's exactly what the scheme would do. That was pre-COVID, pre-online sales and the way that we're having it. So the truth is, we have a dilemma, and it's one we've all got to work together to solve, because if we don't, the whole town suffers. But I think you will see gradually that the town centre will shrink from the west. Gradually, more and more of that will fall to residential. I think some of Brightwells will probably end up as residential, but we have to make it work. Whatever we thought about the scheme, and I think my views are well known and landed me on the naughty step several times, but whatever we thought about it originally, it's here and we have to make it work. But we have to make the rest of the town work alongside it. And this is there's a whole load of questions here. There's COVID, there's retail, there's the amount of residential, and we've just got to work together on this. But it's not going to be one more meeting with Chris Nicholson that gives you the answer, Councillor MacLeod. It's going to be months, if not years, of working out how best we protect the town that we all absolutely love.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I wonder if I could come back, Madam Mayor, if I may.
Yes, of course.
I'm well aware of what Councillor Coburn's saying, and I agree with what she said. But there's a contractual position between Waverley and and Crest Nicholson. There's also a contractual position between Surrey and Crest Nicholson, and we can't disturb that. In fact, we've been asked by Surrey to be extremely careful about what we say about Bright Wells, and we are being careful. I will say this much actually. I was totally against Bright Wells before I was elected as a councillor. In fact, together with David Wow and a few other people, I was part of a legal case to try and stop the thing and try and have it done differently. But we've won this election jointly with the other people concerned. We've inherited this problem, and we're going to do our best to make it work. It's not easy. And as I say, we have contracts that we were no part of creating, but we're required to fulfill them. But behind the scenes, I'll say this much, behind the scenes, we are considering, if you like, plan Bs, where there is discussions with Crest Nicholson and Surrey about that. But we have to be extremely careful what we say publicly and about the whole thing, because there are legal consequences if we say the wrong thing. That's all I'll say in response to what Councillor Coburn saying. I don't really want to say much more than that. Thank you, Madam
How lovely
Mayor.
to have total freedom, Councillor MacLeod. I don't envy you.
Thank you.
And we appreciate where you're coming from, so thank you. Now, I know that we have Caroline Weston who's come in. I'm assuming that this is an additional question because we have got Peter Cohen online and I can see him. And can we elicit your comments question out of you, Peter? Thank you.
Thanks. We're at a transformational moment in Farnham's history with these developments, as you kindly mentioned, the Farming infrastructure plan, our wishes for new cycleways, footpaths, our concerns over community safety. And I was very interested to see the mailing that came with my council tax bill from Surrey, showing that we had 1.7 billion of one-off funds available to Farnham. Can I ask, does Farnham Council have a target for those funds? And do any of our plans neatly overlap with those funding pots so that we can actually enable increased CCTV coverage, for example, of the proposed cycleways and footpaths, just to name one?
I'm going to come straight to you, Councillor Neil, on that because you're on the board as well as being the leader of Farnham.
Yes, excuse me. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I think we probably also could do with a response from Surrey here. So I'll go to Andy as well. The infrastructure programme is being funded at the moment by Surrey County Council in terms of the resource, the human resource that's being applied to it, as being carried by the Surrey County Council budget. The programme itself, some of the work will probably go ahead with Surrey County Council funding as the prime funder, shall we say, especially on the early projects and the work that's already going in place on reducing HGVs and things like that. But the major funding for the other projects will obviously have to come largely outside the Surrey boundary, shall we say. In other words, from central government and through its agencies like Transport for South East and the Enterprise Board. So those decisions haven't yet been made. The concentration at the moment is firming up on what the project should be and working up, what the cost of these things will be. And when we got a better idea on that, it will be easier to work out, how the funding will be approached. Andy, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, thank you, John. I think that's a good description of it. I'll just make a general comment. I think this project is a terrific opportunity for Farnham. Farnham roads and Farnham generally has been neglected for many years. We're on the absolute outskirts of Surrey, but through various things happening, through a project, I'll be absolutely fair, that Jeremy Hunt kicked off actually, and that he involved the Farnham residents, people, and so on. It's very much a multi-party thing. Wyatt Ramsdale has been involved with myself and Stephen Spence, the two Farnham Residents Councillors. In many ways, it's led to this Farnham infrastructure project. And the three councils, Surrey County Council, leader Tim Oliver, Waverley with John Ward as the leader, and Farnham Town Council with John Neal as the leader. This board has been set up, which also includes the three Surrey councillors, and we're all working together in the best interest of Farnham. Now, there's going to be lots of controversy about it, because it's not easy to, if it was easy to have solved Farnham's road problems, they'd have been done years ago. But the road system was laid out in the medieval era for horses and carts, not for cars. And Farnham is now dominated really by traffic, and that problem has got to be resolved, or Farnham will go downhill. It's not an easy problem to solve, but this and people say things like, well, it's been looked at several times before, lots of reports have been done, nothing's ever happened. That's true, but this is the first time actually there's a serious project being set up with people being employed, there's project managers, there's traffic experts there to actually implement something. And that's the difference between what's happened before. Surrey have got in their 5-year plan, 5-year financial plan, they've got 139 million allocated to this. As John said, it will not all come from Surrey. It's got to be bid for, etc., etc. And the project is even bigger, that over a 15-year period, it's seen as something like a 250 million project over that time. So it's a terrific opportunity for Farnham. It won't be easy to make it happen. There'll be lots of different opinions and so on. But I think something good can come out of it. And that's all I want to say at the moment, John. Thank you.
I would like to come in for Wyatt. On the chat line, he did remind me that he is also a Farnham resident and therefore would like to think of himself attending this meeting this evening in that capacity. However, as the third board member who is involved specifically with this project at Farnham, then he too has a voice, and John Neal has expressed his opinions, and also Andy MacLeod. So I think, in all fairness, because Wyatt did have his hand up earlier and wanted to give support to this, can I invite you to say a few words, Wyatt, and apologise?
Pat, thank you very much, and apology accepted. We're in a very complicated situation at the moment, and whilst I am a county councillor at the moment, I won't be in about 6 weeks' time. So you can all breathe a sigh of relief and appreciate that I'm not talking with snake oil. I'm talking from the heart as to where I've been and what I've done. I thought John and Andy gave a really good explanation of where we're at. You know, I'm not as pessimistic as Andy about where how definite the 139 million pounds capital is, but I can't prove it. And certainly we've got over £1 million per year being invested. So the thing I would say to everybody is, you know, that kind of investment with the political commitment and the structure that's being created, you know, is not going to be recreated in 4 or 5 years' time if we don't get it right this time. So please, 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 whatever your political views, whatever your background, do get involved, because this is our big chance to massively change Farnham and sort out some of these infrastructure problems. And we can play games on who didn't do what when going back over the last 50 years. I don't care about that. I want to work with, or I have been working with Andy and Stephen. I want to work with everybody going forward to get the right solution. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you for that. And heavily involved in all of this is our hardworking town clerk. Did you want to add anything, town clerk?
If I could, Madam Mayor, just to quickly say to Peter that one of the important things is levering that money. And so Waverley, for example, has funding to improve cycleways across Farnham Park. That was not sufficient. Surrey is now looking at putting some of that, the money that you've identified, into ensuring that that project can be completed. We're working on combined on getting new electric charging points in the town, and Waverley is doing some in the car parks, Surrey is putting some on the streets. We've collaborated on improved CCTV, where Surrey has given us some funding towards increasing or upgrading the CCTV that we have, which I think helps with the question that Louise de Bourne asked earlier about community safety. And there are combined bids going in for things like active travel to improve other connections through the town. So I think in answer to your question, that money is there and it does fit with our strategic priorities. So we are looking to ensure that we can lever as much of that as possible and use a small amount of local funding to help deliver things which may not be completely covered by the programme. So as the other speakers have said, it's very much a partnership where we're all spending within our means to try and get the best bang for our bucks out of what's available.
Peter, very comprehensive answers. I hope that answers your question.
I look forward to next year's review when you come back and say that you've achieved 150 million for Farnham. Excellent.
Thank you. Now, Caroline Weston has been extremely patient. Can I come to you, Caroline? Did you want to pose a question?
Well, yeah, a question with a sort of statement, really. I used to live in Grays, and it's just a sort of similar thing. And it was a thriving town, it had everything you could need, all the shops, restaurants, great community spirit. And then they built Blue Water. Well, I don't know, most people have heard of that, massive. And so all of a sudden, the town just died. If you went there now, you'd probably find lots of cafes and charity shops, but all of the main shops went because everybody just started going there where the car parking was free. And I just wonder whether that will happen to Farnham once that other build, the mall things built. Will Farnham just suddenly die?
Right, I think Councillor Neil's anxious to come back.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you for the question there. All I can say really is that we are determined that Farnham won't be negatively impacted by this development and the new shops that we hope it'll bring and anything else into that area. It will be a very interesting, a nicely landscaped area. I'm sure it will be very attractive for anyone who's going into it. But the important thing, as you say, is that we make sure that it doesn't suck out the lifeline of the town centre, and that's why we're very concerned to make sure that the town centre gets supported as much as possible, and we're going to put our effort into supporting the businesses there and anything that we can do to make the town centre a more interesting place to visit. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Andy, Councillor MacLeod.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'll just add something to what John said that Crest are known to have tried to encourage retailers to move from the town centre into Brightwell. They haven't been successful in that for two reasons. Not many retailers have wanted to do it, but secondly, Surrey's attitude is they're not here. They're not investing in Brightwell to ruin Farnham town centre. They're a big investor in Farnham in total, and they're helping with this infrastructure project. So they're saying fairly clearly to Crest, don't do that, actually, if I'm absolutely blunt about it. And we've asked them to take that line. So I don't think you'll find many people moving out of the town centre into Brightwells as retailers for the reasons I've just said. Not that Crest haven't tried, but they haven't succeeded.
Right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Anyone else on that one before we leave it? Right, Louise Dayborn, you come back again, yes? Unmute.
Okay, yes, unmuted. Yes, another question really on the infrastructure plan. I appreciate that you've given a town council response, but I have a specific question about whether you could explain how the inclusion of the Western Bypass in that most recent plan fits with the climate emergency plan that you've also declared.
Right, immediately, Councillor Dixon, yes.
Yes, I I'd like to answer this because I'm very, very interested in the environment, and it is an interesting question because the Western Bypass, if you've been to any of the infrastructure planning meetings, sorry, that came out the wrong way. One of the most interesting ideas that came out of the infrastructure meetings was there is actually a de facto Western Bypass, which many of us know is cutting through Dora's Green. And so the fact that there are roads there say that that is the route that links the two roundabouts, the Coxbridge roundabout and the top roundabout. I mean, obviously, that's sort of, but I think the main thing to say is that it will not, if we can provide more efficient roads, that will be better for the environment than having congestion in the town centre. And I think what we're going to see over the next 10 years, and I firmly believe this, is that cars are going to change from being petrol and diesel to being electric. So that should say, I don't think we're going to lose cars altogether. So therefore, the main thing that to do with the environment that cars need to do is to reduce the pollution, which is when we put charging points in places, and there we are combating that. I think actually putting a better road system through to allow free traffic is better for the environment than living with congestion. And we have congestion all over Farnham, on the bypass, in the centre, and increasingly down Upper Hill Road and Folly Hill. So I think anything to reduce that will be better.
Thank you. And John Neal.
Thank you. Sally's given a very comprehensive answer there, which I agree with. I'm sure that we're very aware of all the climate issues. Our project team on this project are already talking about, they don't want to just go building a lot of infrastructure, which is concrete heavy and everything like that. But at the same time, there is a balance to be struck here, I'm sure. We need efficient roads. We need other things that the Western Bypass, if we can get it, would achieve. But we've got to be very aware of any negative impacts on the climate and environment as well. So those are all factors which we're trying to take on board and find the right balance. Thank you.
Could I just come back in?
Please.
Yes, of course.
Just a question. I mean, obviously, yes, Dora's Green Lane is used as a rat run, but in fact is actually a pretty poor structure. But actually, all your maps don't suggest that the Western Bypass actually goes along Dora's Green Lane. It actually goes further in towards the town, and actually goes through Dippenhall and several houses. So it's not using the Dora's Green Lane route.
Yes, the Dora's Green Lane is there, as we know, but the Western Bypass, if it's conceived, and there's no planned route for it at the moment, wouldn't it be unlikely to try and follow that route? So it's a little bit of a red herring, I think. If the Western Bypass is pushed ahead, then there will have to be a proper survey, of course, of all the factors about where would be the best route for it. And that hasn't happened at all at the moment. The case hasn't been made for the Western Bypass in an economic sense at the moment. We are keen to see that as part of the solution that we want, but there's a long way to go on that plan at the moment. So we will try and make sure that we really don't want to try and upset the Dora's Green route as it is, if we can help it, I'm sure.
Councillor Cohen.
Thank you very much. I think Western Bypass is slightly misleading now. Those of us who remember the original Western Bypass, it went through beautiful biodiversity rich land, and it's not at all what I think those of us who support it are envisaging now. There's a huge amount of development. You can't get away from that in Hampshire. There's going to be a huge amount along the A31 corridor and along the A325 corridor. And I think what we are looking at is a strategic route to take traffic from the 325, linking in with the 31 up to the 287, much closer to the Odium roundabout. So in fact, it's a Hampshire road, because in fact, Hampshire is going to create all the extra traffic. It will obviously have a benefit. It will benefit Reckersham, it will benefit Cotsbridge and the whole of the town. Yes, you might say, don't build roads, people won't use cars. I have to say, I'm not sympathetic to that argument. I think we should all be greener, but I think you have to be realistic. And with the amount of development we have all around Hampshire, Surrey, Guildford, Rushmore, we are just going to have to accommodate the car. We're not all going to get on our bikes, and I am certainly not going to walk to Odium. So, you know, we have to actually address the problem. And the problem, as far as I'm concerned, is the extra development in Hampshire, which, if we do nothing, will have a huge impact on a town, our town, which is already congested and therefore polluted. Yes, better cars, greener energy will certainly improve things, but not enough to mitigate the sheer quantity of traffic that the extra development in Hampshire is going to produce. So I'm afraid I'm really in favour of a relief road. I don't mind what we call it, but I think Western Bypass, especially with the current funding regime, is misleading. So we'll come up with a better name for it, but I shall support it 100%.
Good. Now, we've obviously had a cross-section of questions. Currently, I can't see any more. We're coming up to within a few minutes of the hour of open debate. Is there anybody there who wants to say anything more before we draw to a close? Wyatt.
Yes, I want to say something.
Perhaps if Barry wants to go first, that's fine with me for the reasons we discussed earlier. I was just going to come in and comment on my support for John Neal's views about what happens with a unitary authority and how Farnham as an organisation could become much more powerful. And I think with voting power. But I know I'll only be accused of talking with snake oil.
Thank you. Caroline.
Oh, hello. Yeah, I've just really one of the main reasons I came on this meeting was to discuss something that's very, very passionate to my heart. And I did come to one of your council meetings to discuss it then. And that is the amount of litter that is sort of going down all our roads, all these roads you mentioned. And there's people coming to Farnham with the idea of coming to a lovely village town that it is. They'll just see all this litter on either side of the road and think, oh, the A31's appalling, and the road leading up to the country market. You know, words fail me really, and I think there's loads of volunteers now coming out and helping, but you can't. A lot of it you can't do because it's on the verges are too narrow. So I really, really think we need to, really concentrate on doing something about this and quickly before it gets out of hand, and it's just disgusting.
Thank you. Does anyone want to come in on that? John Neal.
Thank you, Caroline. It is a subject we're interested in. It's taken higher profile nationally recently, I notice. So we should be trying to take that seriously. I'm going to ask Councillor George Hess to come in here because it's one of his passions. He's a ward councillor for the town centre, the area which you're probably mainly concerned about. Can we ask George to come in here?
I think you've done that. George, would you like to join us?
You'll unmute, George.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Carolyn, and it's nice to meet you. We've been corresponding by email ever since you came to Farnham Town Council, and I applaud your passion. I cannot agree more with you. The state of the major highways is just appalling and sickening. And litter picks are all very well. And I think we're all aware that they're costing the country, up and down the country, not just around Surrey, many, many millions. absolute fortunes of money clearing up the filth that the British public and the hauliers and tradesmen are allowing to blow off their vehicles and chucking out of their windows. And we need a complete rethink. We need education at schools, colleges, universities. We need some good exemplars, some stand-up people like Premier League footballers who will campaign and relate to young people to get the message across, because we're sinking in it. And as soon as the councils clear it up, it just gets there again. It's unstoppable. And so we need a complete rethink and get some pride in our community and pride in ourselves as well. And whoever's doing this, they've got to really have a reality check. There is a little campaign that started a week ago, a little over a week ago. I think I was member number 26.
27.
Oh, was it 27?
Yeah, I'm 27.
Oh, yeah, right. And it's now up to about 127. It's growing, you know, and we're doing Zoom meetings. We had a Zoom meeting last Saturday. We're having another Zoom meeting this Saturday evening, and trying to really spread the word and find ways that we can actually stop the constant stream of rubbish. It's all very well, as I say, to litter pick, and that's all very worthwhile and laudable, but we've got to stop the litter getting there in the first place. So it's an ongoing project. I'm very passionate. I'm also very passionate about tidying up and cleaning the town centre itself. And as Councillor John Ward, leader of Waverley, is aware, we're after a glutton machine for Farnham so that we can get into all the nooks and crannies and crevices and get all the dog ends and detritus up and really clean the town thoroughly, so that when we are a destination of choice and we've had all the improvements, it'll be a lovely clean town as well for all the people to come into. So, you know, this is an ongoing project, and I encourage everybody to join Life Not Litter. It's on Facebook, and we need more members.
Wonderful. What promotion. Now, this really has awakened everybody up at 9 o'clock at night. 1, 2, 3, 4 people wanting to speak. Sally Dixon.
Yes, just quickly to say that we still have the litter picker programme in Farnham Town Council run by community engagement, and we're always looking for members of that, and we will be back doing our big annual events very soon. But thanks to the many litter pickers that I know around Farnham who've worked throughout the pandemic.
Lost you. Mute.
Yeah, thank you to everyone who was picking during the pandemic, and also to those who are shielding, who we hope will come back and join us again soon.
Right. Next one, Councillor Merryweather, beg your pardon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Carolyn, I represented Webber and Badshot Lee, and certainly the A31, as you head out with Tice's Meadow on your left, is a very sorry and sad sight, frankly. The received wisdom that litter on the road is Waverley's responsibility. But unfortunately, we live in a corner of Surrey, which is bordered by Hampshire. And in fact, clean a road like the A31, Waverley needs Surrey's cooperation to close the road so that it can clean it. And so I'm afraid the problems don't start and end with Waverley. It needs joined up thinking from all of the authorities. And in fact, as you head up onto the Hog's Back, you have to get Guildford involved as well. So it's not as simple as some people might want you to think. The other problem is that we've just spent quite a bit of time talking about all of the hundreds of millions of pounds that are being made available for infrastructure. And no one's talked about how much it will cost to maintain all of this new infrastructure, which is not being budgeted anywhere, how much it will cost to fund the tens of millions of pounds that are being borrowed, 139 million pounds that's being committed by Surrey. 60% of that by Surrey's own account is going to be borrowed, which will cost nearly £5 million a year, which is £5 million less that will be able to be spent on cleaning the roads and filling the potholes. So these sums need to add up, and I'm afraid they don't. So I'd love to see the roads cleaned. I'd love to have people talking about that more, and I'm very glad you raised it because I think there are plenty of people who would rather we didn't talk about it. It's a very inconvenient problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter Cohen. Yes.
Recently, you would have seen that CCTV footage is now admissible for prosecution for litter. With this in mind, I just want to mention your excellent town clerk has already shared with me the Your Fund Surrey map, which is where we've pulled down various projects or hope to pull down funding for various projects locally. Is this one that we could specifically take from tonight? That we look to a more strengthened CCTV network with an emphasis on controlling litter, and that's supported by more regular emptying of existing bins, which has been a problem in areas like the water meadows, for example.
Town Clerk, can you come back on that?
I wasn't aware of that, so thank you for that information, and we'll look into it, Peter.
Thank you. A very quick and instant reply. Now we have Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Litter is a huge problem, particularly on the sides of our roads. And, you know, I'm a little disenchanted with county councillors saying, oh, it's Waverley's problem and stepping back. They are, after all, the highway authority. But I don't think we as authority should be pointing the fingers at each other and saying, it's your problem, it's your problem, it's your problem. The last time someone came up and poked his finger in my chest and said, you know, this litter, what are you going to do about it? It's your fault. The simple answer is, no, it's not. It's your fault. And the idea of, if you drive an unlicensed car or an uninsured car, you can be stopped by the police and they'll take the car away and crush it. So if you throw a can out your car window, get the nice policeman, take your car away and stick it in a pound for a week. You will get an instant response and the litter will go down, because you need to cut this off at the source. It's kind of like when we say you build a new road, you'll get more cars driving on it. If you keep picking up the litter, they'll throw some more out the window and you'll pick it up again and you'll pick it up again and you'll pick it up again. If you find, you know, a few people don't have a car for a week, the windows might stay shut and the litter might go home.
Right, I think everybody's expressed quite emotionally how they feel on this subject, and it is an emotional subject, I think. I think we have come to the end. No, we have one more. Mr. Hartop, the last time I saw you was in the council chamber when you came into the public gallery and wanted to ask a question in public question time when I was chairing the town council. I understand you'd like to speak to us before we finish.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
At long last, after a long campaign, which I'm sure I had no influence at all, we're going to have a 20-mile-an-hour limit, I understand, in the centre of Farnham. And I wonder if John Neal could comment on the likelihood of that actually happening and happening in a way that it is enforced. And also, we are just in Castle Street awaiting the lorries to give us a new surface. And I wonder if he can just answer the question which is on our minds, is the new surface going to be one of the silent surfaces, or is it just going to be a standard tarmac surface? Thank you.
And thank you. Councillor Neil.
Thank you, and thank you, Barry, for the question. I'm not sure if they've started work on Castle Street yet. Perhaps they have.
No, they haven't.
To see exactly what they pour on the surface, I'm sure. I understand it is. Andy might be Councillor Ward. Councillor MacLeod might be able to help here, but I understand it's the middle grade surface that they're putting down. Whether that'll be there for many years, I don't know. It depends how quickly we transform the town centre, I suppose. But you know, it's going ahead, and at least it'll be smartened up for now. Yeah, in terms of the HGVs and the speed limits, well, the programme has made a commitment to progress that, and I'm pretty confident that they will do so. If Andy or maybe even Stephen Spence or Wyatt would like to come in as the county councillors here, they're very welcome.
I'll say something, John. You're absolutely right in what you said. I'm not an expert in road surfaces, but there's 3 grades considered. You can have very, very cheap tarmacs type stuff. At the other extreme, you can have very expensive, which is anti-vibration, anti-noise. And there's an intermediate surface, which lasts longer than the very expensive stuff. And that's what they're putting down for the moment. And I think that's sensible, actually, because the infrastructure project might lead to something different happening in Castle Street, you know, in the not incredibly distant future. Stephen's a resident of Castle Street, and he's had much to do with this as I had. I don't know if Stephen's anything he wants to add to it, but particularly Stephen's been particularly involved in the HGV ban, etc., etc. Do you want to say something, Stephen?
The word that came back after we lobbied on this was that the middle grade tarmac, if it's combined with the truck ban and the 20 miles an hour, should take care of the vibration problems that people have been having on their houses. I mean, the work has started, not that they've actually got a spade in the road, but all the cars are off the road. We've got the Upper Hart car park that Waverley has given the residents to park their cars in. That's the first time we've managed to get Surrey to allow residents alternative parking arrangements when they've taken their paid parking away while the resurfacing is done. So that is the quick answer. It's middle grade because with those other measures, they believe that would be effective.
Thank you, Stephen. And can we also say thank you for your service on Surrey County Council. You, I know, have retired, and you will be moving halfway across the world. So we wish you well, and we hope that you will keep in touch with us once you move.
And perhaps we could extend that also to Wyatt, who's leaving us as well.
I don't think Wyatt is moving halfway across the world,
No,
but yes,
no.
and he wants to speak. So Wyatt, again, a busy county councillor. Thank you for everything that you have done for Farnham. Now, I think you wanted to say something.
Yes, I just wanted to come in early on the answer to Barry Hartop, when he talked about the 20 mile per hour and the HGVs. I believe the HGV ban is definite, albeit it hasn't come in yet. Whereas, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew and Stephen, but and John, but we won't know whether the 20 mile per hour is a promise until perhaps tomorrow's meeting.
Well, even the HGV ban, the traffic order is being issued tomorrow, the 19th of March. There is a public consultation period, so people have got the opportunity to go back and say, no, we want more trucks, not less, but I don't think that's going to happen. And you're right, the 20 mile an hour takes more work, but it is being proposed.
Right. Now, I'm not seeing anybody else. It has gone 9:15. We were due to finish at 8:30. So I do hope that you have all found this a useful evening, and that you have had the opportunity to ask your questions and get forthright answers to them. I want to thank all of the Farnham Town Councillors who are here this evening, who have presented reports and have answered questions. And dear Wyatt is saying thanks. So thank you to Wyatt. And I want to particularly thank the Town Council staff. Technology is not easy nowadays, and managing something like this evening has been particularly difficult. So thank you, Town Clerk, to you and the staff for supporting us all as you do to enable us to do our jobs in the way that we do. So 19 minutes past. Thank you very much indeed. And I hope you found it useful. Thank you.
Thank you.